The first thing you should know is this. My testosterone-to-cortisol ratio improved by 47% in just 6 weeks, and it completely reshaped the way I think about mornings. I didn't use TRT, I didn't experiment with complicated supplements, and I didn't rely on anything extreme. What changed was the way I started my day. At 40, I realized my testosterone had been dropping roughly 2% each year, which is considered normal. But I'd reached a point where normal no longer served me. My morning energy was low, my training felt flat, and even my full-body workout routine wasn't giving me the results it once did. I wanted to understand how to build muscle again without feeling like I was constantly fighting my own biology. When my blood work later confirmed that my free testosterone had climbed from 14.1 to 20.7 nanomoles per liter, it became obvious. These 5 morning habits had shifted my entire hormonal rhythm. And those numbers mattered, not just because I wanted better muscle-building results, but because they gave me back control over my day, my mood, and my performance in resistance training. Everything that follows comes from those 6 weeks, the data behind them, and the adjustments I made along the way. I'll start with the fasting window, because it quietly influences more hormones than most people realize. For years, I bounced between 14-10 and 16-8 fasting schedules without thinking too deeply about why some days felt sharper than others. When I finally committed to breaking my fast at 10 in the morning, I noticed a consistent shift in how my body handled energy. My insulin sensitivity improved, which surprised me with how directly it affected my focus and morning stability. Testosterone naturally peaks between 8 and 10, and fasting through that window seemed to help my body use that peak more effectively. It made my resistance training sessions later in the day feel more explosive, and my full-body workout routines began to feel intentional again instead of something I dragged myself through. Of course, there's a downside. Fasting doesn't pair well with high-intensity morning training. If you're the kind of person who likes sprints or heavy lifting immediately after waking, this window might actually work against you. What I learned is that the fasting window should bend around the training schedule, not the other way around. On recovery days, it felt incredible. On heavy days, especially when pushing muscle-building goals, I sometimes shortened the fast slightly so I wasn't underfueled. Cold exposure became the second pillar of the routine, and honestly, it was the one I resisted the most. The idea of ending a warm shower with icy water sounded miserable, but the science behind it is hard to ignore. I began with 30 seconds at the end of each shower and slowly built my way up to 2 minutes. What surprised me wasn't just the mental clarity, but the hormonal shift that came with it. Norepinephrine increased dramatically, up to 250%, which gave me a clean, alert energy that didn't feel jittery or forced. Even more important, it helped optimize my cortisol awakening response, which meant that instead of random spikes throughout the morning, cortisol rose and fell in a predictable, healthy rhythm. That stability supported my resistance training later in the day, allowing me to work harder without burning out. There was a catch, though. Cold exposure on mornings after poor sleep made everything worse. If I slept fewer than 6 hours, cold water only pushed my stress higher. So I made a rule for myself: sleep first, cold exposure second. Over time, this habit sharpened my ability to train with intensity, recover between sessions, and pursue muscle-building goals in a sustainable way. It didn't replace discipline, but it certainly amplified it. Light exposure was the quiet breakthrough I didn't expect. For years, I underestimated how much morning sunlight influences hormones, mood, and training readiness. When I committed to spending the first 10 minutes outdoors within half an hour of waking, everything from my sleep quality to my daytime energy shifted. Sunlight helped regulate my cortisol rhythm so it peaked when it should, rather than drifting into the late morning where it interfered with focus and recovery. It also supported vitamin D levels, which play a meaningful role in testosterone production and overall metabolic health. What I found most powerful was how this habit anchored the rest of my morning. I wasn't scrolling on my phone, I wasn't rushing, I was simply letting my body transition into the day the way it was designed to. On cloudy days, I used a therapy light box and still noticed improvements, though nothing replaces natural light. This short outdoor ritual also paired beautifully with gentle movement. Sometimes I'd take a slow walk,
letting my muscles wake up before a full-body workout later in the afternoon. The combination felt almost meditative, yet it quietly improved my readiness for resistance training and kept my muscle-building progress more consistent.
Movement was the anchor that tied the first hour of my day together, but I had to learn the hard way that not all morning movement works the same. In the past, I treated every session like it needed to be intense. I thought pushing hard meant faster results, especially when I was trying to figure out how to build muscle more efficiently. But as cortisol patterns shifted with age, intensity first thing in the morning sometimes did more harm than good. So I experimented. Some mornings, I did a simple 5-minute mobility flow that opened my hips, loosened my thoracic spine, and got blood flowing without overstimulating my system. Other mornings, I tried short HIIT sessions. The contrast was obvious. Mobility kept cortisol steady and set me up for a clean, focused day. HIIT, on the other hand, created a noticeable 12% testosterone spike, but also drove cortisol high enough that I sometimes carried the tension for hours. That made later resistance training feel heavier than it needed to be. Eventually, I learned to choose based on my stress levels and training day. On high-stress weeks or days when I had a heavy full-body workout planned, mobility was perfect. On lower-stress mornings when I felt energized, short, intense bursts worked beautifully and supported long-term muscle building. What mattered most wasn't the movement itself, but learning to listen to what my body needed, not what I felt pressured to do. Supplements were the final layer, and I approached them more carefully than anything else. I'd spent years hearing people say that magnesium, zinc, and vitamin D3 were game changers, but until I paired them with proper testing and consistent habits, I never truly felt their impact. During these 6 weeks, I used a simple stack. 5,000 IU of vitamin D3, taken with my first meal, ensured absorption since it's fat-soluble. 30 milligrams of zinc on an empty stomach helped stabilize testosterone levels, though I learned quickly not to take it too close to coffee because it made me nauseous. 400 milligrams of magnesium before bed helped calm my nervous system, improve deep sleep, and indirectly supported recovery from resistance training. None of these worked overnight. It took nearly 8 weeks to feel the full effect, and even then, the improvements only made sense when I looked back at the blood work. My testosterone wasn't just higher, it was more stable. My sleep cycles were smoother, and my energy during a full-body workout felt cleaner, not forced. But I need to say this clearly. Supplements come last, never first. Testing is essential. Too much zinc or vitamin D can backfire. Without lifestyle changes, they're just expensive pills. When everything aligned, sleep, light, movement, fasting, these supplements acted like the final 1% that amplified the entire routine and made muscle building feel natural again, not like a constant uphill battle. When I started looking at how these habits needed to change with age, everything became clearer. In my early 40s, consistency mattered more than intensity. I didn't need to train harder, I needed to train smarter. My body responded best when I maintained a steady routine, kept stress in check, and avoided overreaching, especially on days when my sleep wasn't optimal. As I approached the mid-40s range, recovery demanded more attention than I expected. High-intensity intervals became something I used sparingly, no more than once or twice a week, because they elevated cortisol far longer than they did when I was younger. I also gave myself permission to stretch training days apart when life was stressful, even if that meant delaying a planned session. This shift didn't weaken my results, it actually protected them. For those entering their 50s, sleep and stress management quietly become the foundation of hormonal health. A slightly shorter fasting window, gentler morning movement, and a stronger focus on circadian rhythm often outperform any attempt to push harder. What surprised me most was how these age-specific adjustments complemented resistance training and muscle building as a whole. The older I got, the more I realized that learning how to build muscle wasn't about chasing intensity, but about managing recovery, regulating hormones, and aligning training with physiology rather than ego. These 5 morning habits didn't just raise my testosterone, they rebuilt the structure of my day, reshaped my energy, and helped me feel strong again, not just in the gym, but throughout every hour that followed. At the end of those 6 weeks, what shocked me most wasn't the 47% testosterone increase or the cleaner cortisol curve.
It was how profoundly different my life felt simply by changing the first hour of my morning. These habits didn't just help me train better, they helped me live better. My resistance training sessions felt purposeful again. My full body workout routine finally matched the strength I knew I still had, and muscle building no longer felt like pushing against a wall. It reminded me that performance after 40 isn't about fighting age, it's about working with your physiology instead of against it. These habits are simple, repeatable, and backed by real data, not theory, not hype. If you're looking to regain energy, rebuild muscle, or rediscover discipline, this is where you start. One morning, one habit at a time. And if you're ready for the next step, how to build muscle after 40 with a smart weekly training structure, eating pattern, and recovery system, let me know in the comments. I'll break down the full blueprint so you can apply it immediately and watch your numbers, your strength, and your confidence rise week after week. If this helped you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs the reminder that their strongest years aren't behind them. They're just waiting on the other side of a better morning.